My son's wife mocked me at family lunch, called me a simple worker in front of colleagues. Everyone laughed. My wife told me to stay quiet. So I did, until she mentioned my son manages Apex Industrial's $20 million account. I pulled out my phone, called my assistant on speaker. Jim, who owns Apex? The room went silent. My son went white. The embarrassing old man they mocked owns his biggest client, and his career just became mine to decide. Before I take you through exactly how everything unraveled, do something small for me. Stay with the story, be part of it, and let me know where you're listening from. Stories like this travel farther when real people are behind them. I am Robert Patterson. I'm 62 years old, and my family tried to erase me for the sake of my son's ambitious new wife. Before I tell you about the moment, I wiped the smug smiles off their faces in front of a room full of their most important colleagues. Let me know where you're watching from in the comments. It's good to know I'm not alone. The air in the private dining room at Carmichael's was thick with a scent of expensive wine and quiet judgment. It was supposed to be a celebration lunch, my son Marcus's promotion to senior vice president at Thornhill Capital. 30 people, all dressed in their corporate best, murmured congratulations while crystal glasses clinked like wind chimes. On the wall behind the head table, a projection screen showed Marcus's career highlights, a carefully curated slideshow of his rise through the ranks. I was sitting at the far end of the table, practically in the corner, just as they wanted. A relic from a different era, tolerated but not celebrated. Then Victoria, my son's wife of 6 months, stood up with her champagne flute, her perfectly manicured hand resting possessively on Marcus's shoulder. She was everything Marcus had always wanted, Ivy League educated, connected to old money, ambitious as a shark in designer heels. "Thank you all for coming," she said, her voice smooth as silk. "And now, before we hear from Marcus, I'd like to say a few words about family." Her eyes swept the room and landed on me with a look of practiced sympathy. Marcus has worked so hard to get where he is today, overcoming so many obstacles, including, well, let's just say not everyone in the family understands the corporate world. A ripple of uncomfortable laughter. Every eye turned to me. It was a power play disguised as a toast. My wife, Patricia, sitting 2 seats away from me, shot me a warning glance that said clearly, "Don't make a scene." Marcus was smiling, not stopping his wife, not defending me. He was enjoying this. Victoria continued, her voice dripping with false kindness. But that's what makes Marcus so inspiring. He didn't let his, how shall I say, humble origins hold him back. I mean, his father worked with his hands his whole life. Blue collar, simple work. Nothing like the sophisticated environment Marcus has built for himself. She raised her glass. To Marcus, for being the first Patterson to truly make something of himself. The room erupted in applause and laughter. My wife Patricia was nodding along, her face flushed with what I recognized as embarrassment. Embarrassment of me. My daughter Sarah, Marcus's younger sister, was staring at her plate, her jaw tight. She was the only one who looked uncomfortable with this public humiliation. I sat there, my hands folded in front of me, feeling the weight of their contempt like a physical thing. Worked with my hands. Simple work. First Patterson to make something of himself. Every word was a carefully placed knife, designed to cut me down to size in front of Marcus's colleagues. But then Victoria made a mistake. She got greedy. "In fact," she said, her confidence building, "Marcus tells me his father doesn't even understand what he does. Can you imagine? Robert here thinks Marcus just works with numbers. Isn't that precious?" More laughter. He has no idea that Marcus is managing the Thornhill Capital's relationship with their biggest client, Apex Industrial Holdings. $20 million in annual business. But don't worry, Robert. I'm sure your work was important too, whatever it was you did. The room was watching me now, waiting for the old man to shrink, to smile awkwardly and take the hit like a good sport. That's what they all expected. Patricia was giving me that look again, the one that meant please don't embarrass Marcus on his big day. I didn't say what they expected. Instead, I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out my phone. I unlocked it slowly, deliberately, and held it up so they could see the screen. Then I pressed a single number on speed dial. The phone rang twice before a familiar voice answered, crisp and professional. Mr. Patterson, what can I do for you? I put the phone on speaker and set it on the table in front of me. My voice was calm, almost pleasant. Jim, it's Robert. I'm here at a family lunch, and something interesting just came up. I wanted to clarify something about Apex Industrial. Victoria's face had gone from triumphant to confused. Marcus was frowning, trying to understand what was happening. Of course, sir. Jim's voice came through clearly. What do you need? Well, I said, looking directly at Victoria, my daughter-in-law here just mentioned that my son Marcus is managing Thornhill Capital's relationship with Apex. She seems quite proud of it. I just want to confirm, who exactly owns Apex Industrial Holdings? There was a brief pause, and I could almost hear Jim smile through the phone. You do, sir. You founded it 35 years ago, and you still hold 87% of the shares. It's your company. The silence in the room was deafening. Victoria's champagne flute froze halfway to her lips. Marcus's face went from tanned and confident to white as paper. Patricia's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Around the table, Marcus's colleagues exchanged confused, uncomfortable glances. And Jim, I continued, my voice still calm, remind me, what's the status of our relationship with Thornhill Capital? We're currently in our annual contract review, sir, Jim said. As you know, we've been with Thornhill for 8 years, but we've been exploring other investment firms. You asked me to prepare proposals from their 3 main competitors. I have them ready for your review next week. I let that information settle over the room like snow. $20 million in annual business. Under review. Competitors waiting. Thank you, Jim. I said, that's all I needed to confirm. We'll talk Monday. I ended the call and slipped my phone back into my pocket. Then I looked at Victoria, who seemed to have forgotten how to breathe. You're absolutely right about one thing, I said quietly. I did work with my hands. I built things. Started as a welder, then a foreman. Then I started my own industrial manufacturing company, Apex Industrial Holdings. We make components for aerospace, automotive, and defense contractors. Last year, we did just over $340 million in revenue. I turned to Marcus. And you're right that I don't fully understand what you do, son, because you never explained it to me. You were too busy being embarrassed of where you came from. Too busy pretending I was some ignorant old man who didn't belong in your sophisticated new world. The room was frozen. No one knew where to look. Patricia finally found her voice, but it came out as a strangled whisper. Robert, you never said. You never asked. I interrupted, my eyes still on Marcus. None of you did. You all just assumed. You assumed that because I wore jeans and work boots instead of suits, because I preferred a beer to champagne, because I didn't use corporate buzzwords, that I was simple, that I was nothing. Victoria had found her voice again, trying to salvage the situation. Mr. Patterson, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize I was just trying to be funny. No, I said, cutting her off. You were trying to humiliate me. You were trying to make yourself look good by making me look small. And my son let you do it. My wife let you do it. I looked at Patricia. You told me to stop making the family look bad. But I wasn't the one making us look bad. Patricia. They were. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor in the silent room. Marcus, you spent the last 5 years treating me like an embarrassment. You stopped inviting me to your work events. You introduced me to your colleagues as your father, then quickly changed the subject. You never once asked about my business, my life, my thoughts. You just wanted me to be quiet and stay out of the way of your perfect corporate life. Marcus tried to speak, but I held up my hand. I'm not finished. Here's what's going to happen. On Monday, Jim and I are going to review those proposals from Thornhill's competitors. And I'm going to make a business decision, not a family decision. If Thornhill Capital is the best firm to manage Apex's investments, we'll stay. If not, we'll move our $20 million somewhere else. I looked around the room at the shocked faces of Marcus's colleagues. And that decision will be based entirely on the quality of service we receive, not on who my son works for. Because unlike some people in this family, I don't let personal relationships interfere with good business sense. I walked toward the door, then paused and turned back. Oh, and Victoria? I did understand what Marcus does. I've understood from the beginning. I just didn't realize until today that what he does includes allowing his wife to mock his father in public while he smiles and nods. That's a kind of work I'll never understand. And then I walked out of that dining room, leaving behind the wreckage of their perfect celebration. I could hear the whispers starting before I even reached the exit, the uncomfortable shifting of chairs, the awkward attempts at conversation. The party was over. But to understand how we got here, you have to go back 6 months, to a wedding that felt like a coronation, and to the years of quiet dismissal that led up to it. The wedding was everything Marcus and Victoria wanted. 250 guests at the Harbor Club, overlooking the water, flowers that probably cost more than my first car, a string quartet that played while we waited for the ceremony to begin. I remember standing there in my rented tuxedo, feeling like an imposter in my own son's wedding. The other fathers there, Victoria's father especially, looked comfortable in their formal wear, like they were born wearing tuxedos. I felt like I was wearing a costume. I had offered to pay for the wedding. It's what fathers do, or at least what fathers did in my generation. It's tradition, it's expected. It's how you show your love and support for your child as they start their new life. But Victoria's parents had insisted on covering everything. We want to give Victoria the wedding she deserves, her mother had said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, and I'll never forget the way she emphasized the word deserves, as if my money wouldn't have been good enough, as if whatever I could contribute would have somehow tainted their perfect celebration. The unspoken message was clear as crystal. They could afford it. They had the refined taste pulled off, and I probably couldn't do either. I didn't argue. By then, I had learned that arguing with my family's perception of me was not just pointless but actively harmful. Every time I tried to correct their assumptions, every time I tried to show them who I really was, it seemed to make things worse. They had decided who I was somewhere along the way. They had committed to that narrative, and nothing I said, no evidence I could provide, would change their minds. It was easier to just let them believe what they wanted to believe. The wedding itself was beautiful in that cold, perfect way that expensive things often are. Everything was coordinated, from the ivory and gold color scheme to the precisely timed schedule of events. Victoria walked down the aisle in a dress that probably cost more than I paid for my first house, a cascade of silk and lace that must have taken a team of seamstresses months to create. Marcus stood at the altar looking proud and polished, every inch a successful corporate executive in his custom-tailored tuxedo, his hair styled perfectly, his smile confident and bright. I sat in the front row next to Patricia, watching my son marry a woman who had never once, in the entire year of their engagement, asked me about my life, my work, my thoughts on anything. During the reception, I was seated at a table with some distant relatives and a few of Victoria's family friends who clearly had no idea who I was. Marcus and Victoria's table was in the center of the room, elevated on a small dais like a throne, surrounded by their college friends and professional colleagues, all of them young and beautiful and successful. The hierarchy was clear. The important people were at the center, bathed in light and attention. The rest of us were arranged in concentric circles of decreasing importance, with my table somewhere near the outer edge, close to the kitchen doors. I remember watching Marcus make his rounds after dinner, working the room like the professional he was, shaking hands, laughing at jokes, bending to hear whispered comments from seated guests, playing the perfect host and groom. He had always been good at this, at making people feel special, at commanding a room. He stopped at every table, every single one, spent a few minutes with each group, made them feel included in his special day. Every table except mine. I watched him move through the room in a careful pattern, and I couldn't help but notice, that he seemed to be deliberately avoiding my section. Patricia noticed too. "He's busy, Robert," she said quietly, her hand briefly touching my arm in what might have been meant as comfort, but felt more like a warning. "It's his wedding day. Don't make this about you. He'll come over when he has a chance." But he never did. The reception ended. The happy couple drove off in a vintage car decorated with tin cans and streamers, and Marcus never made it to my table. Don't make this about you. That phrase had become her mantra over the years, Her automatic response anytime I expressed hurt or disappointment about how Marcus treated me. When Marcus got promoted and didn't call to tell me. When he waited for me to see it on his social media feed 3 days later. When he bought his first house and didn't invite me to see it until 3 months later. And only then because Patricia had basically forced him to have us over. When he introduced me to Victoria for the first time at a loud restaurant and spent the entire dinner talking about her family's connections, her father's business associates, her mother's charity work, never once asking me a single question or including me in the conversation. Don't make this about you. But it wasn't about me. It had never been about me. It was about them, about their embarrassment, about their need to distance themselves from the blue-collar roots that Marcus had spent his entire adult life trying to escape like they were something toxic and shameful. I wasn't always an embarrassment to my son. There was a time when Marcus was proud of me, or at least not ashamed. He was maybe 10 years old, and I had taken him to one of my job sites. Apex was smaller then, much smaller. Just me and about 20 employees working out of a rented warehouse that leaked when it rained and had heating that barely worked in the winter. But we were building something, creating something real and tangible, and I was proud of every weld, every piece we produced. I remember the look on his face when he saw the massive pieces of equipment we were fabricating, the way his eyes went wide, when I showed him how to read the blueprints, how the flat technical drawings translated into three-dimensional objects made of metal and sweat and precision. "Dad," he had said, his voice full of genuine awe, "you built all of this?" "Not by myself," I had told him, ruffling his hair. "But yeah, this is what we do. We make things that help build other things. Airplanes, cars, buildings. Little pieces that fit together to make something bigger. See that bracket there?" I pointed to a complex piece of machine metal. "That's going to be part of an airplane wing. When you fly somewhere someday, Marcus, you might be flying on something we made right here." He had been impressed then. Truly impressed. Proud, even. He wrote a school report about me, about my company, about what I did. I still have it somewhere, tucked away in a box in my office. Yellow with age, but still precious. My dad, the builder, by Marcus Patterson. He got an A on it. The teacher wrote a note at the bottom saying how wonderful it was to see a child so proud of their parents' work. I kept that report for years, pulling out sometimes when I needed to remember that there was a time when my son saw me as someone worth being proud of. But something changed as he got older. It didn't happen all at once. It was gradual, insidious, like rust slowly eating away at metal. Maybe it started in high school, when he made friends with kids from wealthier families, kids whose fathers were doctors and lawyers and executives, who lived in bigger houses and drove luxury cars and took exotic vacations. Or maybe it was college, when he went to business school and started learning about finance and investment banking and all the things that people with clean hands and expensive suits do for a living. When he started reading about Wall Street and corporate mergers and learned that there was a whole world of wealth and status that had nothing to do with making physical things. By the time he graduated, something fundamental had shifted. He had stopped bringing friends home. He had stopped mentioning what I did for a living. When people asked, he would say vaguely, "My dad owns a manufacturing company," emphasizing the word manufacturer with a slight grimace, like it was something slightly distasteful, and then change the subject as quickly as possible. The pride was gone, replaced by something that looked a lot like shame. I tried to talk to him about it once, maybe 5 years ago. We were having dinner, just the two of us, a rare occurrence even then. I had asked him why he seemed uncomfortable talking about my work. "I'm not uncomfortable, Dad," he had said, not meeting my eyes. It's a different world. You wouldn't understand." "Try me," I had said. He had sighed, the way you sigh at a child who's asking too many questions. "Look, in my world, in the corporate finance world, image matters, perception matters. And when people hear manufacturing, they think, I don't know, they think factory, assembly line, working class. It's not the image I'm trying to project." "So I'm not the image you're trying to project," I had said quietly. "Don't take it personally," he had replied, signaling the waiter for the check. "It's just business. Just business." My son had reduced me, his father, to a liability in a professional image. And the worst part was that Patricia had agreed with him. He has to think about his career, Robert, she had said later that night. You can't expect him to talk about welding and manufacturing when he's trying to impress people in finance. I had stopped trying after that. If they wanted to pretend I was just some simple working man who didn't understand their sophisticated world, fine. Let them pretend. I had my business, my employees, my work. I didn't need their validation. But I would be lying if I said it didn't hurt. It hurt every time Marcus introduced me to his colleagues, and I could see him waiting for the conversation to end. It hurt every time Patricia made excuses for why I couldn't come to one of Marcus's work functions. It hurt when Victoria entered the picture and immediately sized me up as someone beneath her, someone who could be safely ignored or condescended to. The real breaking point came about a month before the lunch. It was a Sunday afternoon, and Marcus and Victoria had come over for dinner. It was Patricia's idea, trying to maintain some semblance of family connection. Sarah had begged off, saying she had work to do, but I suspect she just didn't want to sit through another evening of watching Victoria treat me like the help. We were sitting in the living room, Patricia fussing in the kitchen, when Victoria started talking about Marcus's work. She was going on about some big account he had landed, some industrial company that was moving their investments to Thornhill Capital. It's such a coup for Marcus, she was saying. This company, Apex something, they have over $300 million in assets. The commission on managing their portfolio is going to be substantial, and Marcus was the one who sealed the deal. I had been half listening, reading the newspaper when the name registered. Apex, my company. I looked up, Apex Industrial? Victoria looked surprised that I had spoken. Yes, I think that's it. Do you know it? I've heard of it, I said carefully. What exactly did Marcus do to seal this deal? Marcus jumped in, clearly proud. It was all about relationship building, Dad. I spent months cultivating a connection with their CEO's assistant, getting FaceTime with the decision makers. Finally got them to agree to move their investment portfolio to Thornhill. Who did you meet with? I asked, keeping my voice casual. The CEO's assistant, guy named Jim something. The CEO himself is apparently some old guy who started the company decades ago, but is basically hands-off now. Jim's the one who really runs things. Jim, my executive assistant. The man who had been with me for 15 years. The man who absolutely did not run my company, but who was excellent at gatekeeping and managing my schedule. That's impressive, I said, my mind racing. Did you ever meet the CEO? Marcus laughed. No, like I said, he's apparently some old-timer who doesn't really involve himself in day-to-day decisions anymore. Jim said he'd present our proposal to him, but it was really Jim's call. I looked at my son at the pride on his face and realized he had no idea. Jim hadn't mentioned who owned Apex because I had told him years ago not to. I kept my business life and my family life separate, partly because I preferred it that way, but mostly because my family had made it clear they weren't interested. And now Marcus was taking credit for landing my company as a client, not knowing that the CEO he thought was some irrelevant old-timer was his own father. The irony was almost funny. Almost. That's quite an accomplishment, I said, folding my newspaper. You should be proud. We are, Victoria said, her hand on Marcus's shoulder. It's just the kind of success we expected. Marcus has always been destined for great things. Not everyone is cut out for the corporate world, but Marcus was born for it. The implication was clear. Marcus was born for success because he had somehow transcended his origins, had risen above his working-class father to become something better. I excused myself shortly after that, saying I had some work to catch up on. Patricia gave me a look that said I was being rude, but I couldn't sit in that room anymore, listening to my son and his wife celebrate his success in landing a contract with my own company, without knowing it was mine. In my home office, I called Jim. Tell me about Marcus Patterson's involvement with our Thornhill account. I said. Jim was quiet for a moment. You know about that? He's my son, Jim. He just spent dinner telling me how he sealed the deal with Apex Industrial. Another pause. Mr. Patterson, I followed your instructions. I didn't mention your name or your involvement. As far as Thornhill Capital knows, I'm the primary contact. But, sir, if you want to tell him... No, I interrupted. Don't tell him anything. Not yet. But Jim, I need you to do something for me. Anything, sir. I need you to prepare a comparison analysis. Thornhill Capital versus their top 3 competitors. I want to see if we're really getting the best service, or if Marcus just has a good sales pitch. Are you thinking of moving the account? Jim sounded surprised. We'd been with Thornhill for 8 years. I'm thinking of making an informed business decision, I said. Can you have it ready in 2 weeks? Of course, sir. After I hung up, I sat in my office for a long time, thinking about my son, about the way he had smiled while telling me about his big success, not knowing that his success was built entirely on his father's company, about Victoria's casual dismissal of my worth as a human being, about Patricia's constant admonitions to not make waves, to not embarrass Marcus, to know my place. I had tried for so long to be the father Marcus needed. I had gone to his soccer games and school plays. I had helped him with his homework and taught him to drive. I had paid for his college education, his business school, had given him money for his first apartment security deposit when he started his job in the city. And in return, he had learned to be embarrassed of me. He had learned from Patricia and from Victoria and from his corporate friends that there was something shameful about where he came from. That success meant distancing yourself from your roots, from the people who had built the foundation you were standing on. Well, I was done being a foundation. I was done being the embarrassing father who was trotted out for obligatory family dinners and then hidden away when Marcus's important friends were around. The lunch was Marcus's idea. A celebration, he had called it. I just made senior VP, and Victoria thought it would be nice to have a family lunch with some of my colleagues. Show them I come from a solid family. A solid family. That's what I had become. A prop in my son's corporate theater. Patricia had been excited. This is good, Robert, she had said. Marcus is including us. Don't mess this up. Don't mess this up. As if my mere presence at my son's celebration was a potential disaster waiting to happen. I had agreed to come, but I had also made a call to Jim. That analysis I asked for, is it ready? Yes, sir. I have to say, Thornhill Capital is good, but Riverside Investment Group has a slightly better track record and lower fees. The difference isn't huge, but it's there. Send me everything. And Jim, I want you to prepare 3 contract proposals. 1 for Thornhill to review our current arrangement, and 1 each for their top 2 competitors. I want all 3 ready to go by Monday. Sir, are you sure? Moving an account this size is going to cause waves. That's the idea, Jim. That's exactly the idea. The lunch had started pleasantly enough. Marcus was in his element, surrounded by his colleagues, playing the successful executive. Victoria was at his side, perfectly dressed, perfectly poised, the ideal corporate wife. I had sat at the end of the table, as far from Marcus as possible while technically still being part of the group. Patricia sat near Marcus, basking in her son's success. Sarah had declined to come, and I didn't blame her. The speeches started after the main course. Marcus talked about his journey, about hard work and dedication. He thanked his colleagues and his wife. He thanked Patricia for her support. He did not thank me. Then Victoria stood up, and I knew from the look in her eyes that this was going to be bad. She had that gleam, that cruel confidence of someone who knows they're about to get a laugh at someone else's expense. And she did. She got her laughs. She got her moment of putting the old man in his place, of establishing the hierarchy, of making it clear that Marcus had succeeded not because of his father, but in spite of him. She had made a mistake, though. She had assumed that because I wore jeans and drove a pickup truck, because I said, ain't sometimes and preferred beer to wine, that I was powerless, that I was exactly what I appeared to be, a simple working man who didn't understand the sophisticated world his son had entered. She had forgotten the first rule of business: never underestimate your opponent. And she had definitely forgotten to do her due diligence. When I made that phone call, when Jim's voice came to the speakerphone confirming that I owned Apex Industrial, I watched Victoria's face go through a fascinating transformation. Confidence to confusion, to comprehension, to pure, cold horror. Marcus looked like he'd been hit with a 2x4. His mouth was open, but no sound was coming out. He kept looking from me to the phone to Victoria and back again, trying to process what had just happened. Around the table, his colleagues were starting to put the pieces together. The old man they'd been laughing at, the embarrassing father with dirt under his fingernails, owned the company that represented $20 million in annual business. The company Marcus had been taking credit for landing. Patricia had gone very pale. She was staring at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Shock, certainly, but also something else. Maybe the dawning realization that she had been complicit in dismissing and diminishing someone who had never been the person she thought he was. The silence after I ended the call with Jim was profound. No one knew what to say. The other people in the room were frantically trying to figure out if they should pretend they hadn't heard, or acknowledge what had just happened, or just quietly excuse themselves from what was clearly about to become a family disaster. I stood up, and that's when I gave my little speech. About working with my hands. About building something from nothing. About their assumptions and their embarrassment and their dismissal. Patricia tried to stop me as I headed for the door. Robert, wait, we need to talk about this. No, Patricia, I said quietly. We needed to talk about this years ago. But you were too busy telling me not to embarrass Marcus. Well, guess what? I'm done worrying about embarrassing anyone. They should have worried about embarrassing themselves. I walked out into the bright afternoon sunshine, got into my pickup truck, the one Marcus had always been embarrassed of, and drove back to my office. Jim was there waiting for me. I assumed things went well, he asked with a slight smile. Define well, I said, sinking into my office chair. I just blew up my son's celebration lunch and probably destroyed what was left of my relationship with my family. But you also made your point, Jim said. For what it's worth, sir, I've watched you eat dinner alone in this office more nights than I can count, because your family was too busy to include you. Maybe it's time they learn what you're actually worth. Maybe, I said, or maybe I just made everything worse. My phone started ringing almost immediately. Patricia first, then Marcus, then Victoria, then Patricia again. I ignored all of them. I wasn't ready to talk. I wasn't ready to hear Patricia's excuses, or Marcus's stammered apologies, or Victoria's attempts to salvage the situation. Instead, I did what I always did when I needed to think. I went down to the factory floor. Even though I had 200 employees now and could afford to spend all my time in the office, I still liked to walk the floor, to see the work being done, to talk to the people who were actually building things. Boss! Tommy, one of my welders, called out when he saw me. What are you doing down here on a Saturday? Needed to clear my head. I said, how's that Anderson contract coming? We talked about work for a while, about quotas and quality control and delivery schedules. Real things, tangible things, things that mattered. You okay, boss? Tommy asked after a while. You seem a little off. Family stuff, I said with a shrug. Nothing I can't handle. Family's tough, Tommy agreed. My kid went off to college, and now he acts like he's too good to help out at my brother's garage on weekends. Says he's pursuing professional opportunities. He rolled his eyes. Kids, right? Yeah, I said quietly. Kids. I stayed on the floor for a couple of hours, helping with a tricky weld, checking measurements, just being useful. It was grounding. It reminded me of who I was, of what I had built, of why it mattered. When I finally went back to my office, there were 37 missed calls and 28 text messages, most from Patricia and Marcus. A few from Sarah, my daughter, saying, Dad, what happened? Mom is freaking out. I texted Sarah back. I'll explain later. Are you okay? Her response was immediate. I'm fine. Are you? Getting there? I typed back. I didn't respond to anyone else. Instead, I opened my laptop and reviewed the analysis Jim had prepared. Thornhill Capital was good, but Riverside Investment Group was better. The numbers didn't lie. If I was making a pure business decision, I would move the account. But this wasn't a pure business decision anymore, if it ever had been. This was about my son's career. This was about whether I was willing to hurt Marcus professionally to make a point about how he had hurt me personally. I sat there for a long time, staring at the numbers on the screen. Still here, sir? Jim poked his head into my office. It was almost 8 p.m. Still here, I confirmed. For what it's worth, Jim said, Marcus called me about an hour ago. He wanted to know if you were really planning to move the account. What did you tell him? I told him that you were reviewing proposals from multiple firms and would make a decision based on what's best for Apex Industrial, because that's the truth. I nodded. That is the truth. He sounded scared. Jim said, I've never heard him sound like that before. He kept saying that losing this account would be devastating for his career, that his bosses would blame him. They probably would. I said, Is that what you want? To devastate his career? I thought about that. Did I want to hurt Marcus? Did I want him to lose his job, to fail, to suffer? No, I said finally. I don't want to hurt him. I just wanted him to see me. To actually see me, not the embarrassing old man he thinks I am. I wanted them all to see me. I think they see you now, sir, Jim said with a small smile. Yeah, I agreed. I think they do. The next morning was Sunday. I was in my home workshop, a converted garage where I kept some of my old equipment and tools, when Patricia came out. She stood in the doorway for a long moment, just watching me work on a piece of metal, shaping it, filing down the rough edges. How long? She asked finally. How long have you been the CEO of Apex Industrial? I founded it 35 years ago. I said, not looking up from my work. You know this, Patricia. You were there. But I thought, you never talked about it like a real business? I supplied. Like something important? Yeah, well, neither did anyone else in this family. She came into the workshop, picked up a random bowl from my workbench, turned it over in her hands. Why didn't you tell us it had gotten so big? 340 million in revenue, Robert. I tried to tell you, multiple times over the years. But you and Marcus were always too busy to listen. You were embarrassed of what I did, so I stopped talking about it. It was easier that way. I was never embarrassed, Patricia protested weakly. I finally stopped working and looked at her. Patricia, you told me not to wear my work boots to Marcus's graduation, because people might think I was a construction worker. You made excuses for why I couldn't come to company events with you. You spent years telling me not to embarrass Marcus, as if my very existence was something to be ashamed of. She sat down heavily on my work stool. I just wanted him to succeed. I didn't want people to judge him based on having a father who worked with his hands. I finished. On coming from a working class background? Patricia, there's nothing wrong with where we came from. I built something real. I created jobs. I helped build planes and cars and buildings that people use every day. That matters. I know it matters, she said, but her voice was small. Do you? Because you spent years treating it like it didn't. Like I didn't. We sat in silence for a while. Finally, Patricia spoke again. Marcus wanted to come over and talk to you. I'm not ready for that yet. Robert, he's scared. He thinks you can pull the account from Thornhill and destroy his career. I'm considering it. I said honestly. Her eyes went wide. You can't do that to your own son. Why not? He stood there while his wife humiliated me. He laughed. He spent years treating me like an embarrassment. Why exactly do I owe him my business? Because he's your son, Patricia exclaimed. Because family doesn't do this to each other. I looked at her. Really looked at her. Family doesn't do what, Patricia? Doesn't pull business accounts? Or doesn't publicly humiliate their father? Doesn't dismiss decades of work and success? Doesn't act ashamed of where they came from? Because I'm pretty sure Marcus has been doing all those things for years, and you never once told him to stop. She didn't have an answer to that. No, Patricia, I said quietly. We needed to talk about this years ago. But you were too busy telling me not to embarrass Marcus. Well, guess what? I'm done worrying about embarrassing anyone. They should have worried about embarrassing themselves. I walked out into bright afternoon sunshine, got into my pickup truck, the one Marcus had always been embarrassed of, and drove back to my office. Jim was there waiting for me. I assume things went well, he asked with a slight smile. Define well, I said, sinking into my office chair. I just blew up my son's celebration lunch and probably destroyed what was left of my relationship with my family. But you also made your point, Jim said. For what it's worth, sir, I've watched you eat dinner alone in this office more nights than I can count, because your family was too busy to include you. Maybe it's time they learn what you're actually worth. Maybe, I said, or maybe I just made everything worse. My phone started ringing almost immediately. Patricia first, then Marcus, then Victoria, then Patricia again. I ignored all of them. I wasn't ready to talk. I wasn't ready to hear Patricia's excuses, or Marcus's stammered apologies, or Victoria's attempts to salvage the situation. Instead, I did what I always did when I needed to think. I went down to the factory floor. Even though I had 200 employees now and could afford to spend all my time in the office, I still liked to walk the floor, to see the work being done, to talk to the people who were actually building things. Boss! Tommy, one of my welders, called out when he saw me. What are you doing down here on a Saturday? Needed to clear my head. I said, how's that Anderson contract coming? We talked about work for a while, about quotas and quality control and delivery schedules. Real things, tangible things, things that mattered. You okay, boss? Tommy asked after a while. You seem a little off. Family stuff, I said with a shrug. Nothing I can't handle. Family's tough, Tommy agreed. My kid went off to college, and now he acts like he's too good to help out at my brother's garage on weekends. Says he's pursuing professional opportunities. He rolled his eyes. Kids, right? Yeah, I said quietly. Kids. I stayed on the floor for a couple of hours, helping with a tricky weld, checking measurements, just being useful. It was grounding. It reminded me of who I was, of what I had built, of why it mattered. When I finally went back to my office, there were 37 missed calls and 28 text messages, most from Patricia and Marcus. A few from Sarah, my daughter, saying, Dad, what happened? Mom is freaking out. I texted Sarah back. I'll explain later. Are you okay? Her response was immediate. I'm fine. Are you? Getting there, I typed back. I didn't respond to anyone else. Instead, I opened my laptop and reviewed the analysis Jim had prepared. Thornhill Capital was good, but Riverside Investment Group was better. The numbers didn't lie. If I was making a pure business decision, I would move the account. But this wasn't a pure business decision anymore, if it ever had been. This was about my son's career. This was about whether I was willing to hurt Marcus professionally to make a point about how he had hurt me personally. I sat there for a long time, staring at the numbers on the screen. Still here, sir? Jim poked his head into my office. It was almost 8 p.m. Still here. I confirmed. For what it's worth, Jim said, Marcus called me about an hour ago. He wanted to know if you were really planning to move the account. What did you tell him? I told him that you were reviewing proposals from multiple firms and would make a decision based on what's best for Apex Industrial. Because that's the truth. I nodded. That is the truth. He sounded scared. Jim said, I've never heard him sound like that before. He kept saying that losing this account would be devastating for his career, that his bosses would blame him. They probably would. I said, is that what you want? To devastate his career. I thought about that. Did I want to hurt Marcus? Did I want him to lose his job, to fail, to suffer? No, I said finally. I don't want to hurt him. I just wanted him to see me. To actually see me. Not the embarrassing old man he thinks I am. I wanted them all to see me. I think they see you now, sir, Jim said with a small smile. Yeah, I agreed. I think they do. The next morning was Sunday. I was in my home workshop, a converted garage where I kept some of my old equipment and tools, when Patricia came out. She stood in the doorway for a long moment, just watching me work on a piece of metal, shaping it, filing down the rough edges. How long, she asked finally, how long have you been the CEO of Apex Industrial? I founded it 35 years ago. I said, not looking up for my work. You know this, Patricia. You were there. But I thought, you never talked about it like a real business? I supplied. Like something important? Yeah, well, neither did anyone else in this family. She came into the workshop, picked up a random bowl from my workbench, turned it over her hands. Why didn't you tell us it had gotten so big? 340 million in revenue? Robert, that's... I tried to tell you, multiple times over the years. But you and Marcus were always too busy to listen. You were embarrassed of what I did, so I stopped talking about it. It was easy that way. I was never embarrassed, Patricia protested weakly. I finally stopped working and looked at her. Patricia, you told me not to wear my work boots to Marcus's graduation because people might think I was a construction worker. You made excuses for why I couldn't come to company events with you. You spent years telling me not to embarrass Marcus, as if my very existence was something to be ashamed of. She sat down heavily on my work stool. I just wanted him to succeed. I didn't want people to judge him based on having a father who worked with his hands. I finished. On coming from a working class background? Patricia, there's nothing wrong with where we came from. I built something real. I created jobs. I helped build planes and cars and buildings that people use every day. That matters. I know it matters, she said, but her voice was small. Do you? Because you spent years treating it like it didn't. Like I didn't. We sat in silence for a while. Finally, Patricia spoke again. Marcus wants to come over and talk to you. I'm not ready for that yet. Robert, he's scared. He thinks you could pull the account from Thornhill and destroy his career. I'm considering it. I said honestly. Her eyes went wide. You can't do that to your own son. Why not? He stood there while his wife humiliated me. He laughed. He spent years treating me like an embarrassment. Why exactly do I owe him my business? Because he's your son, Patricia exclaimed. Because family doesn't do this to each other. I looked at her. Really looked at her. Family doesn't do what, Patricia? Doesn't pull business accounts? Or doesn't publicly humiliate their father? Doesn't dismiss decades of work and success? Doesn't act ashamed of where they came from? Because I'm pretty sure Marcus has been doing all those things for years, and you never once told him to stop. She didn't have an answer to that. I'll make my decision based on what's best for my business, I said finally, just like I always have. If Thornhill is the best firm, I'll stay with them. If they're not, I'll move my account. That's how business works. Marcus should understand that. He's a corporate hotshot, after all. Patricia left without another word. Later that afternoon, Sarah came by. She let herself in through the back door and found me still in my workshop. "Hey, Dad," she said, leaning against the doorframe. "Hey, sweetheart. So, I heard about lunch yesterday." "I'm sure you did." She came in and sat on the work stool, same place Patricia had sat that morning. For what it's worth, I think it's about damn time someone put Victoria in her place. That surprised a laugh out of me. "Language, Sarah." "I'm 28, Dad. I can say damn." She grinned, but it faded quickly. "Seriously though, are you okay?" "I'm fine. Might have blown up my relationship with your mother and brother, but I'm fine." "About time for that too," Sarah said matter-of-factly. "Dad, I've been watching them treat you like crap for years. Every family dinner where Victoria makes some snide comment about your clothes or your truck. Every time Marcus changes the subject when someone asks what you do. Every time Mom tells you to be quiet or stay home because you might embarrass them. I've watched it all and I've hated it. Why didn't you say something?" She looked down at her hands. "Because I'm the baby of the family. Because Marcus is the golden child, and I'm just there. When I try to stand up for you, they treat me like I'm being dramatic or difficult. So I stopped trying. I'm sorry for that." "Don't be sorry. That wasn't your battle to fight." "Maybe not, but I should have fought it anyway." She looked up at me. "Are you really going to pull your account from Thornhill?" "I don't know yet. Probably not. But I wanted them to think about it. I wanted Marcus to realize that actions have consequences." "He's freaking out," Sarah said. "Completely freaking out. Victoria's threatening to divorce him because this is, and I quote, social suicide. Mom's trying to figure out how to fix things. And Marcus is finally realizing that he doesn't actually know anything about his own father." "Good," I said. "Maybe it's time he learned." Over the next few days, the fallout continued. Marcus left voicemails. Patricia tried different approaches, going from angry to pleading to cold silence. Victoria, to my surprise, showed up at my office. Jim tried to stop her, but I told him to let her through. She came into my office looking significantly less confident than she had at the lunch. No designer suit this time, just jeans and a sweater. Her makeup wasn't perfect. She actually looked human. "Mr. Patterson," she said, standing in front of my desk like a student called to the principal's office. "Victoria, I came to apologize." "Did you now?" She shifted uncomfortably. "I made assumptions. I was wrong. I'm sorry." I leaned back in my chair, studying her. "You're not sorry for what you did. You're sorry it backfired." "That's not." "Yes, it is." I interrupted. "You're sorry that the embarrassing old man turned out to control your husband's biggest account. You're sorry that your cruel little joke blew up in your face. You're sorry that your social status took a hit when your mockery got thrown back at you in front of all those people. But you're not actually sorry for treating me like garbage. If I was still just a simple working man, you thought I was, you wouldn't be here." She opened her mouth, then closed it. Finally, she said quietly, "You're right." That surprised me. I had expected denials, excuses, justifications, not agreement. "I did make assumptions," she continued. "I saw a man in jeans and work boots, a man who didn't fit into the corporate world Marcus and I work in, and I dismissed you. I thought you were—" She hesitated. "Beneath you?" I supplied. "Yes," she admitted. "I thought you were beneath me, beneath us. And I thought making fun of you would be easy and safe, and would make me look good in front of Marcus's colleagues. And now I realize I'm an arrogant classist snob who just destroyed her marriage and her social standing, because I couldn't keep my mouth shut. Despite myself, I almost smiled. Marcus is leaving you? I don't know. Maybe. He's furious with me. Says I've ruined his career. His mother won't speak to me. Even his colleagues are giving him a wide berth because nobody wants to be associated with a woman who insulted the owner of a $300 million company. Good, I said simply. She looked at me, and for the first time I saw something genuine in her expression. Regret, maybe even shame. I deserve that. You did. Is there anything I can do to fix this? Anything I can say? I thought about it. No, there isn't. You show me who you really are, Victoria. The person who thinks it's funny to mock someone else to make herself look good. The person who judges people by their clothes and their job titles instead of their character. That person isn't someone I want in my family. I understand. She turned to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, Mr. Patterson, Marcus loves you. He's been trained to be embarrassed of certain things. By me, by his colleagues, by the corporate culture. But underneath all that pretentious crap, he does love you. Maybe, I said, but love without respect is meaningless. She nodded and left. That evening, Marcus finally showed up at my door. Patricia had clearly given up trying to stop him because she wasn't with him. Dad, he said when I opened the door, can we talk? I considered sending him away, but he was my son, and despite everything, I did love him. Come in, I said. We sat in my living room, the same room where he had told me about landing the Apex account, not knowing he was talking about my company. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. I don't know where to start, Marcus said finally. How about with an apology? I'm sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry. I should have stopped Victoria. I should have defended you. I should have never let it get to that point. You're right. You should have. But that lunch wasn't the real problem, Marcus. It was just the final straw. He looked at me, confused. What do you mean? I mean that you've been ashamed of me for years. You've hidden what I do. You've avoided including me in your life. You've treated me like an embarrassment that you had to manage. That's the real problem. Dad, Let me finish. I know I'm not some fancy executive. I know I don't fit into your corporate world. I don't wear suits. I don't play golf at country clubs. I say ain't sometimes, and I drink beer instead of wine. But I built something real, Marcus. I created jobs. I raised a family. I worked hard every single day of my life. And you treated that like it was something to be ashamed of. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was thick. I was ashamed. God help me, I was ashamed. Because in my world, in the world I chose, that kind of work is looked down on. People in finance. They think they're better than people who work with their hands. And I believe them. I believe that I had somehow transcended my background, that I was better than where I came from. And now I realize what an idiot I've been. I've been taking credit for landing your company as a client, not knowing it was your company. I've been strutting around talking about my big success, when the only reason I had that success was because of you, because the CEO's assistant was willing to work with me, because his boss, my father, founded and still runs the company. Jim didn't give you the account because of me. I corrected. He gave it to you because Thornhill presented a good proposal. I don't give my business away as favors, not even to my son. But you could have told me. You could have told me you owned Apex. Why would I? You never asked about my work. You never showed any interest in my business. You were too busy being embarrassed of your old man to actually know anything about him. Marcus put his head in his hands. I don't know how to fix this, Dad. I don't know if you can. I said honestly. The trust is broken, Marcus. You chose Victoria in your career and your image over your own father. You chose to be ashamed instead of proud. I don't know how we come back from that. Are you going to pull the account? He asked quietly. I don't know, I said, and I meant it. I'm making a business decision. If Thornhill is the best firm for Apex, I'll stay. If not, I'll move my business. That's how this works. That's fair, Marcus said, though his face was pale. It's more fair than I deserve. We sat in silence for a while. Finally, I spoke. I didn't do this to hurt you, Marcus. I did it because I was tired of being invisible. I was tired of being dismissed. I was tired of being treated like I didn't matter. And when Victoria stood up at that lunch and mocked me, and you smiled and nodded along, something in me just broke. I'm so sorry, Dad. I'm sorry for all of it. For Victoria, for the years of dismissing you, for being ashamed when I should have been proud. You built an empire from nothing, and I treated it like it was nothing. I didn't build an empire. I corrected. I built a good company. There's a difference. But yeah, it matters. And I matter. And I'm done pretending I don't just make other people comfortable. Marcus nodded. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why didn't you tell us? Why did you let us think Apex was just some small manufacturing business you barely paid attention to? Because you never asked, I said simply. You never asked about my day, about my projects, about my challenges. You asked about my health and the weather, and that was it. You didn't want to know about my work because you were embarrassed of it. So I stopped trying to tell you. That's on me, Marcus admitted. I should have asked. I should have cared. Yes, you should have. Another long silence. I've made a decision, I said finally. Marcus looked up, fear in his eyes. I'm keeping the account with Thornhill, but there are going to be conditions. Anything, Marcus said quickly. First, you're not my account manager anymore. I'm going to ask for someone else. He flinched but nodded. I understand. Second, you're going to take 3 months and actually learn about what Apex does. You're going to come to my facility, meet my employees, understand the work we do. You're going to learn about the company you've been taking credit for landing. Yes, absolutely. Third, you're going to apologize to your sister. Sarah spent years watching you and your mother treat me like an embarrassment, and she stood by me when nobody else would. You owe her an apology. I will, first thing tomorrow. And fourth, I said, my voice hard now, you're going to end things with Victoria. Not because I'm telling you to, but because if you don't, we're done. I'm done being around someone who thinks it's acceptable to humiliate people for fun. If you choose her, that's your choice, but it means you're choosing to not have me in your life. Marcus didn't hesitate. Victoria and I are already done. She moved out 2 days ago. I filed for divorce yesterday. That surprised me. Because of what happened? Because of what she revealed about herself. Marcus corrected. Dad! When I heard her mocking you, when I saw the look on your face, I realized what I'd become. I'd married someone who thought cruelty was sophisticated. Someone who measured people's worth by their bank accounts and job titles. Someone who thought it was funny to humiliate a good man just to score social points. He looked at me, his eyes wet. I'd become her. That's who I was. That's who I'd let myself turn into. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. I don't know if you can forgive me, Marcus continued. I don't know if I can forgive myself. But I want to try. I want to learn about your business. I want to know my father, the real man, not the caricature I created in my head. I want to be someone you could be proud of again. I was always proud of you, Marcus. I said quietly, until you stop being proud of me. I want to fix that. If you let me. I looked at my son, really looked at him. I saw the successful executive, yes, but I also saw the scared little boy who had once been so proud of his dad. I saw the man he could be, if he chose to be better than he had been. Okay, I said finally, we'll try. But Marcus, this is your last chance. If you slip back into your old ways, if you start being ashamed of me again, we're done. I mean it. I understand. Thank you, Dad. Thank you for giving me another chance. We sat there for a while longer, not saying much, just existing in the same space. It wasn't comfortable, not yet, but it was a start. Over the next few months, Marcus kept his word. He came to the factory, not in a suit, but in jeans and work boots. He learned about what we did, met the employees, asked questions. Real questions, not performative ones. He and Sarah reconciled. She was skeptical at first, but when she saw that he was genuinely trying to change, she softened. They started having lunch together again, brother and sister, without the weight of pretension and embarrassment between them. Patricia was harder. She couldn't quite accept that she had been wrong. She kept making excuses, kept trying to justify her years of dismissing me and encouraging Marcus to do the same. We went to counseling, tried to work through it, but I don't know if we'll make it. Some wounds might be too deep to fully heal. As for me, I'm different now too. I'm not hiding anymore. When people ask what I do, I tell them. When business associates want to meet, I invite them to the factory, show them what we build. I wear my work boots and my jeans, and I don't apologize for them. The other day, Marcus brought his new girlfriend to Sunday dinner. She's a teacher, down-to-earth kind. When she asked what I did, Marcus answered for me, and his voice was full of pride. My dad owns Apex Industrial Holdings. They manufacture components for aerospace and defense. He started it 35 years ago with nothing but a welding torch and a dream, and now it's one of the most respected companies in the industry. He's brilliant, and I'm lucky to be his son. I looked at Marcus, and for the first time in years, I saw my son again. Not the corporate climber, not the man ashamed of his roots. Just my son, finally proud of his father. It wasn't everything. We still had a long way to go, but it was something, and sometimes something is enough. But here's the thing nobody tells you about moments like these, about standing up for yourself after years of being diminished and dismissed. The story doesn't end with that one dramatic moment. That lunch wasn't a conclusion, it was a catalyst. Life doesn't wrap up neatly in 90 minutes like a movie. The real work, the hard work, came the months after. There were nights when I lay awake wondering if I had done the right thing, wondering if I had been too harsh, too dramatic, if I should have found a quieter way to address the years of dismissal and shame. Patricia certainly thought so. Even after everything, even after seeing the evidence of how wrong she had been, she still believed I had handled it wrong. You could have just told them privately, she said more than once. Did you have to humiliate Marcus in front of his colleagues? And every time she said it, I had to resist the urge to remind her that Marcus and Victoria had humiliated me first, that they had done it deliberately, publicly, cruelly, that they had made a spectacle of mocking me in front of the very same colleagues, treating my life's work like it was a joke, treating me like I was nothing. The difference, of course, was that when I fought back, when I revealed the truth, I was being vindictive. When they attacked me, they were just being honest, just telling it like it was. That's how it works when you're the one at the bottom of the family hierarchy. Your pain doesn't matter as much. Your dignity is expendable. But I don't regret it. Not for a second. Because that moment in the restaurant, when I made that phone call and watched their faces change, when I watched decades of dismissal and contempt crumble under the weight of truth, that moment set me free. Not free from pain. Not free from the complicated, messy reality of family relationships, but free from a need to be someone I'm not. Free from the obligation to make myself smaller so others can feel bigger. I learned something important in the months that followed. I learned that respect and love are not the same thing. Marcus loves me. I believe that now. But for years, he didn't respect me. And without respect, love is just a word. It's an obligation, a biological connection, but it's not a relationship. Real relationships, the ones that matter, the ones that last, they're built on mutual respect. On seeing each other clearly and valuing what you see. Marcus is learning that now. It's not easy for him. He's having to unlearn years of conditioning, years of corporate culture that taught him to value image over substance, to measure worth in dollar signs and job titles. He's having to confront the ugly truth that he'd become exactly the kind of person he used to despise when he was that 10-year-old kid writing a school report about his dad, the builder. Sarah and I are closer than ever. She admitted to me recently that she'd been carrying guilt for years, watching Marcus and Patricia treat me the way they did and not speaking up. I should have said something, Dad, she told me over coffee one afternoon. I should have defended you. You were put in an impossible position. I told her. You were the youngest. You were trying to keep the peace. I don't blame you for that. But I blame myself, she said. I watched them erase you, and I let it happen because it was easier than fighting. I understood that. Sometimes survival means silence. Sometimes you have to pick your battles. Sarah has her own journey with this family, her own scars from growing up in Marcus's shadow. We're all figuring out how to be better, how to be real with each other. As for Victoria, I heard she moved back to Boston, back to her family's social circle, where she could pretend that her brief marriage to Marcus had been a minor misstep, a learning experience. From what Sarah tells me, she's already engaged again to some finance guy with the right pedigree and the right connections. I hope he knows what he's getting into. I hope his family is warned. The truth is, Victoria was never the real problem. She was just a catalyst, the person who said out loud what my family had been thinking for years. She was the one cruel enough or honest enough to put it into words. But the dismissal, the shame, the hierarchy, that was already there. It had been building for decades. Sometimes I think about that version of myself who sat at the end of that table, listening to Victoria mock me while my wife told me not to make trouble. I think about how small he felt, how invisible. And I realize that man is gone now. He died the moment I pulled out my phone and called Jim. In his place is someone I'm still getting to know. Someone who doesn't apologize for who he is. Someone who doesn't make himself smaller for anyone else's comfort. Building a company was hard. Building airplane parts and automotive components. Creating something tangible and real, that took decades of work. But rebuilding yourself, rebuilding your relationships, reclaiming your voice after years of silence, that's harder. That takes a different kind of courage. And I'm still building, still working on it. Every day. Thank you for sticking with me this far. Your support means everything. Do me a favor and hit that like button and drop a comment below about your own family stories. Have you ever had to stand up to people you love? How did it turn out? Did you find peace on the other side, or are you still searching for it? Your stories help me know I'm not alone in this. And please subscribe so you don't miss what comes next, because the journey isn't over yet. Not by a long shot. Because here's what I've learned. The moment you find your voice, the moment you stop letting others define you, that's not the end of the story.